Hi, CistReactZ. How you doing? Did you know that 70% of you guys are not subscribed? Also, did you know that I am living in those 70% walls right now? And if you want me to stop, you'll hit that subscribe button?
What is up, you awesome kisters? It is CistReactZ, guys. Today we are reacting to Five Nights at Candy's Is Kinda Awesome by Minaxa. So make sure you guys subscribe to them, hit that like button, and comment down below, and let's get into this bop.
In the early days of Five Nights
See what they
at
think about
Freddy's,
Five Nights at Candy's.
didn't quite have
The Return to Freddy's
hold
Recoded.
on the community
I've heard of
as
that one.
they do today.
Or maybe I
Not
have.
only were there far fewer of them, but a lot of the time their quality left a lot to be desired. With
Alpha
a
Kitty
few
Fazcat.
exceptions, of course. However, the same cannot be said for a fan game that was released on July 18th, 2015. This fan game
FNAC.
had gotten closer to the quality and style of the original Five Nights at Freddy's than any fan game before it, and it
Seriously?
would go on to become debatably the
I didn't know it was
most
famous for the
popular
quality, too.
fan game series that the franchise would ever.
And by the way, like when I say that, I just didn't know like the quality was like an issue at this time. Like Five Nights at Candy's does look like a great game, but I just didn't know that it was famous for the quality and stuff.
Spawn. I
love those
of
games.
course,
So
referring
there's no offense.
to Emil
Just want
Mako's
that clear.
Five Nights at Candy's. In this video, I want to take a look back on everything that this series has to offer as we await the highly anticipated
Blank.
fourth installment. I'll first go through every game and then include a section for lore.
That one was
With all
terrifying.
that out of the way, let's begin. Before we continue, I'm proud to announce that this video is sponsored by
I'm happy they got it out of the way immediately and didn't pull a MatPat and do it like right in the middle of the video.
Only been out-
This is Minaxa's link down here if y'all want to check that out. I always try to find the sponsor link if I skipped it.
Surfshark VPN today. The story actually begins more than half a year before the release of Five Nights at Candy's. On November 21st, 2014, Emil Mako, the game's developer, posted this render of his original Five
Wait,
Nights
there's
at
Ace
Freddy's
in
character with the
Emil's
caption,
name?
"Please meet Candy the Cat. He sure would like to meet you." Remember,
Scott
Five Nights
didn't
at
make
Freddy's
this, I
had
did.
only been out for like 2 months by this point, so Emil had done this pretty
Wow.
quickly. Even just the next day, he had uploaded multiple new renders of the character, which were much more polished and closer to the look that we know now.
Jeez, Emil was
The
ahead
next day,
of
the
their
jaw
time.
would be changed to fit the toy animatronic aesthetic from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which had only been out for like 2 weeks. Over the next few weeks, leading into December, he would post even more renders
was on
of
the
Candy
grind.
and the new complimentary Cindy character to go along with him. On December 18th, he made a post about people using this, admittedly very high quality for the time, and Scott S.
Just there are people
fan
using my
art
pictures
as
as
fake
sneak
Five
peeks
Nights
for
at
FNAF
Freddy's
3.
teasers, which is really funny considering what came out literally 5 days later. Oh yeah, by the way, if you haven't watched this video,
Was that a
you totally
real
should.
leak?
That series was a mess. Anyways,
The
he would
Return to
post a
Freddy's was
few
kinda
more new
weird.
characters in the passing months, and for
Don't
some
fuck with the
reason,
penguin, he's
he
missing an
also
eye.
made this.
What the hell? Bro, Blank is going
But
crazy.
his activity on social media platforms would slowly come to a halt. Eventually, these culminated in a Tumblr post on May 19th,
I'm not
2015,
dead.
hinting towards a secret project that has been using up all of his available time. But he promised that it will hopefully be worth it. 11 days later, we got this.
Soon.
And then we got
Oh yeah, he's really
these.
fitting that Scott,
On July 3rd, he released a teaser trailer, and eventually
that
the
Scott
release date
style.
came. He made a post on July 18th stating the release date would be that day. He also said, and I quote, "I only intended for there to be one Five Nights at Candy's. There won't be a Five Nights at Candy's 2, nor a third or fourth installment. I will continue with
Clueless.
updating the game
YouTube
if
to
necessary,
MP3.
but that is all I'll do with the game." Well, we all know how that went.
Yeah.
All jokes
And now
aside,
he's in the
the first
Fanverse
game
initiative,
was
too.
finally released.
That's crazy.
What did it have in store for us?
No, that's crazy. Didn't intend for another one to come out.
What
Now
is
he's
going
in.
on, guys? This is Ryan here.
Oh
and
my
this is
God.
And welcome to Indie Smash. And in this episode, we're going to be playing Five Nights at Candy's for you all.
What's up, YouTube? What's going on? Corey Kitchen here, and welcome.
That is insane. What a like.
Yo, what is up, my gladiator? Sam here, and we're back.
Who was this?
Everybody, my name is Markiplier.
Who was that? The other guy before Markiplier.
Rationing out the Five Nights.
This game was
Gladiators, what?
big. Like, really big. Five Nights at Candy's was almost universally adored by everyone.
No, going back to the past was
But
crazy.
What was so good about it?
Seeing the Ryans
Let's
and
talk about
Markiplier and Corey.
The game opens
Dang.
almost identically to Five Nights at Freddy's, with a newspaper advertisement beckoning people into an overnight security
Candy's
shift
Burgers
at
and
Candy's Burgers and Fries. Also akin to Five Nights at Freddy's, the margin of the newspaper actually contains a hidden message, though in this case it's more of a behind-the-scenes look into the developer's thought process.
Oh wow.
In summary, it essentially boils
smart
down
place to
to
put it.
him starting the development for the game on April 15th, after being told his characters were used without his permission because he received many suggestions to make a fan game with the character anyways, so he decided, yeah, I'll just do it. He decided to buy Click Team Fusion and develop the game since he was successful in designing the characters.
No,
the
Click Team
location,
Fusion
and the
really
original
created
game
like
mechanic.
great people.
He then goes on to describe his enjoyment in writing and voicing the game's phone guy, and thanks the reader for playing the game. What a wholesome message. Once the night actually begins, the message left for you by the phone guy serves to explain the game's mechanics, which
I never
is
knew that
pretty
was
standard.
Mel's voice.
You have one new message.
Hello? Hello?
So that's what
Hi?
Mel sounds like.
Junior manager here.
You have a door on the left and right of you, which is also standard, but a third opening across from you in the form of a window. The mechanic that really shines, though, is this game's unique quirk, the night vision. You see, for the most part, the cameras are pitch black by default, but you can
like,
use
see
night
their
vision to
eyes
see
through it and
what you
stuff.
otherwise couldn't. Another unique mechanic that sort of flies under the radar is how the power was implemented. The doors actually progressively drain more power the longer that they're closed, which means you're punished tremendously for keeping them shut over long periods of time.
That I
As
definitely did not
expected,
know.
for the first few hours of night
Kinda
one,
just held the door shut
pretty
till
much
they
nothing
left.
happens. But on this night, you will get familiar with Candy and Cindy. At some point, you'll notice a pair of white eyes staring at you through the darkness.
Yeah, horrifying.
Now, though this mechanic is great for the horror and visual aspects of the game, it may seem to make the cameras a little redundant on a surface level, since as long as you can see the eyes in the doorway, do you really need to look at the camera? Well, we'll talk about that.
Was
more
there
later.
animatronics that you needed to look
After
at
the
before they
first
got
night
to
is
the
cleared,
office?
an
I
after
forgot,
night
man.
cutscene
It's been a long time
plays,
since I played
and
FNAC
it
1.
seems like we're in some kind of factory, and there's a character that looks like the puppet that we're familiar with from
The puppet
FNAF
looks
2.
pissed.
But it's kind of off, and he doesn't seem to be a particularly big fan of you.
Oh god.
Night 2 is also rather uneventful. Aside from under rare circumstances, it only adds Chester, a chimp animatronic that acts similarly to the other
Screw
two
Chester.
characters that we know now. This night also has its own cutscene, which shows that it's likely going to happen after every night. This time, however, the video feed is unavailable, just audio.
I like how this is giving me like a quick refresher on the lore too. I wonder if the puppet's just staring at the camera so intently that it just shut off. Is that an endoskeleton on the conveyor belt? Like it was filled with
And night
blood.
3 is where things start getting a little more intense, which is generally how the formula for these games goes. On top of all the previous animatronics becoming significantly more active, this night adds 2 new threats. On camera 11, which shows the drawing room, a plain-looking animatronic named Blank has been
Yep.
sitting idle. His plain look and name are because he's meant to be a blank canvas for children to doodle on using crayons, because he has a plastic coating on top of him or whatever, which is honestly a brilliant idea and character design. I could honestly see that being a real implementation in some random animatronic restaurant.
It's just like how they left
he
Mangle
goes
there
through
to be
transitions from
mangled up
lifting
by
up
kids.
his head to then standing up and then disappearing. Immediately after he leaves Cam 11, he will be in Cam 5, which is right outside the window.
Brody
And
punches
checking
the
on him
window
while
out.
he's there will cause him to punch the window in front of you, breaking the glass. And from there, he returns to his original position if you close the window door on him. So basically, it's like Foxy. Obviously, the problem
Like
is
Foxy,
that the
but
window
instead he
of
punches your
opportunity
whole window
for
down.
actually closing the door on him isn't the largest, so you really have to pay attention to where he is. And to add even more difficulty to that, his eyes don't glow like every other animatronic, so you actually need the night vision to tell where he is. Pretty neat subversion of established gameplay. On a similar note, another animatronic whose eyes you can't see becomes active on this night. The phone guy refers to an incident
your
that
cat?
happened about a month beforehand that caused an older animatronic to be decommissioned and stored in the back. This is Old Candy, who is missing his eyes entirely. Due to this, he also cannot.
Should I be ashamed that I called it Withered Cat? I didn't even think that it might just be called Candy. I just called it Cat. That was just like a quick thinking. Oh man.
Be seen on the cameras without night vision.
Me from like 2017 would be ashamed to not know who that
Isn't
is.
much of a threat until night 4. Once night 3 is over, we get to see what is probably the aftermath of the audio that we heard the night before. On night 4, the difficulty gets ramped up. Old Candy is now active, appearing on the left door, but with no glowing eyes to let you know he's there. Because of this, the night vision must be used on the camera outside the door. This night's cutscene
You just see some
shows
tall
a
animatronic
reappearance
trying
of
to
the
get
puppet
in.
from before, now pointing at the newer toy models we're familiar with from the actual gameplay. And Night 5 is basically just Night 4 with far more aggressive behavior from Old
I totally
Candy
forgot to talk about the
specifically.
penguin.
The phone guy alludes to an extra
What, he's
storage
literally
room that is
Balloon Boy?
off the camera system, saying that it's nothing special to pay any attention
Poor
to.
penguin.
Alright, you've probably noticed that there is an extra door in the second party room, which is on camera 9, I think. Yeah, it's not on the map. That's because it's really nothing special. It's like a storage room. We don't go in there much. Like, I haven't even been in there myself, you know. I just
For
wanted
good
to
reasons.
inform you that you don't need to worry about it, and that it's not a mistake, that it's not on the map or anything like that. Anyway, you've done a great job so far. I'll talk to you next week. Good night.
Ironically, this kinda just serves to draw attention to it. Upon completing this night, the penultimate cutscene from this game sheds some light on the timeline of events in this game. Obviously, the gameplay
Loading,
itself takes
record.
place in 1987, since it follows the closing of the pizzeria from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. However, we see that the Candy's brand actually goes back decades before that, as the older line of animatronics
Holy.
seems to have been brand new in 1964. The puppet character
Oh my
is
gosh.
still present and seems to be
A
directly
mistake.
communicating with the player this time, talking about a mistake and a
My
problem
mistake.
that you may have caused. After
Your
this, we see our
problem.
paycheck issued to a Mary Schmidt, with a haunting silhouette of an unfamiliar animatronic towering over it.
The rat.
Thus, we transition into the final night
Now
of
see,
the
that's
first
called
game,
the
which
rat.
is Night 6. As expected, this night pumps the difficulty up pretty severely. At this point, the player is expected to have found the pattern of checking the left and right door cameras and blank in order to optimize power usage. On this night, the rat becomes incredibly aggressive, coming from both doors
That
and
thing
also
is-
showing no signs
that is probably
of
the most
existence
horrifying
unless
thing
night vision is used. When this night
creator
is
of
finally
FNAC
completed,
created.
we get our final cutscene showing the rat along with the old Candy and Blank, still decades before the game begins. He seems to be rather old and tattered even here, which may be implying that he's from an even older generation of Candy's characters. He rises, walks around, and then stares at you with death-filled eyes. Based on the way the character is being framed, it seems like the rat is being advertised as the major antagonist. Finally, you get your overtime paycheck, and After completing the custom night, you get fired for tampering with the animatronics, and that ends Five Nights at Candy's.
Why do they always mess up on night 6? Alright, FNAC 2.
Now, you may be wondering
Oh.
why there are 4 more games that we still need to talk about in some capacity, since Emil explicitly said he wouldn't make sequels. And to answer that question, we need to refer to a Reddit post that he made after the release of Candy's 1, which elaborated on his mindset while creating the game in the first place. To summarize what he said, he starts with describing how the first game took him about 3 months to make because he was busy with exams and a summer vacation that he didn't develop on.
I would imagine it's taking longer.
As
3
well
months
as
is
being
crazy.
inexperienced with modeling at a level this sophisticated and being brand new to Click Team. The reason why he didn't want to make sequels originally is because he thought maybe FNAF 4 would be the end of the series, meaning the community would begin to die out. On top of
Hilarious.
that, since he was a little late to the FNAF fan game scene, he thought that the bucket of available original ideas and mechanics was nearly exhausted by the point that he came in. And to put a nail in the coffin, he also just didn't really have the time. He had to start looking for a job and just couldn't be at his computer all the time to develop a game. However, 2 of these circumstances changed. Obviously, he still has a job, but we know Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was
everyone just
not
thought it was going to be
of
the
Five
end.
Nights at Freddy's. Not only that,
Not
but
even close.
once that game came out, shortly after Candy's, the available pool of mechanics that could still feel like a Five Nights at Freddy's experience, as well as what was perceived to be technically achievable within the Click Team engine, were both revolutionized. When he actually sat down to think about why the first game took him so long, he realized most of it could be attributed to a lack of experience, and obviously he has that now.
I just
He
sucked,
knew
but
doing
not
it
anymore.
again would be much easier. After coming up with some new mechanics and ideas that he liked, he confirmed that Five Nights at Candy's 2 would indeed be coming, eventually. And just like last time, he released a bunch of teaser images leading up to the release
You
of
got the
trailer.
withered look.
From the teasers, we could parse that the game was probably taking place after Candy's 1, because the
still remember
animatronics
playing
were
this,
now
like,
withered.
Day 1.
On February 4th, 2016, the trailer was released, and the game would release just a few weeks later.
I don't know, man. Having to sit in a
The
factory
game opens
all
with
night
small
on a bet
cutscene
was the
depicting
weirdest
a chat
idea
room
ever.
Or private
Like,
messaging
why would you
prompt.
do that?
The backstory goes that you've lost a bet between friends and have to spend 5 nights at a warehouse within an abandoned factory.
Like,
And
bro,
that
who
factory
would even do
just so
that?
happens to be the remains of Robotics Corp., which were responsible for manufacturing the animatronics for Candy's Burgers and Fries. In place of a phone call, the game begins with a set of basic instructions through text to make sure you understand the gameplay before it dunks you into the deep end. You sit at a desk in the dark, with your phone flash being your only source of illumination, and like most FNAF games, you're provided with a camera system as well. In a similar fashion to Five Nights at Freddy's 3, this game utilizes audio lures as your main defense against the animatronics.
How do they even know to
office
use the
phone
audio
lines.
lures?
The first night is incredibly simple, with only one animatronic to defend against, that being Cindy, though she's certainly in a state where you could say she's seen better days. You may have noticed there is a slight discrepancy in Cindy's design compared to what we know now, but I also wouldn't blame you for missing it.
Wait,
This
what is
is
it?
because the animatronic in this game is actually a withered version of a newer Cindy model. This gets confirmed in the new minigames that take place after every night, where these posters display the V2 versions of Candy and Cindy. In this first minigame, you play as Chester the
What
Chimp,
the-
and
Yeah, I
the
probably
calendar in the
would've never
security
noticed that.
office confirms the year is
Seriously.
1989, which is 2 years after Five Nights at Candy's 1. The office also happens to contain a key that goes with a lock on the door to the storage room the rat is kept in. Upon approaching the door with the key obtained, the minigame comes to an abrupt end and Night 2 begins.
The monkey really let the rat
Night
out.
2 also has instructions instead of a phone call, this time referring to Chester, who attempts to break into the vents. Simply use the phone in the room he's attempting to do this in, and he'll be scared away somewhere else. The rest of the gameplay is pretty much identical to that of Night 1. In the Night 2 minigame, you play as the Penguin. Your goal
Man, I
on
remember
this
just
night is to
spamming
collect
phones
the
left
scattered
and right.
pieces of Chester, who you played as in the previous minigame.
Oh, it looked like the penguin got the
From
mention.
this, it can likely be assumed that the rat tore Chester apart when he entered the storage room. And
Poor Chester.
The office calendar says 1989, just like before. Which means this could even be taking place later the same night, or at least within the same year. After collecting all 3 pieces, the minigame comes to an end and the third night begins. The penguin is now an active participant, and withered new Candy is also added. Candy acts exactly the same as Cindy does, walking around random rooms and occasionally appearing down the hall just to be lured in by one of the phones. These are the standard wandering animatronics. The penguin, however, is a very unique animatronic compared to the rest. He acts similarly to Phantom Balloon Boy from Five Nights at Freddy's 3.
So just get
He
up in
will
your
appear
face, but
very
he won't
close
kill
to
you.
a random camera, and if you take too long to leave the camera or exit the interface entirely,
yeah.
he will shut down your camera system for a brief
That
period of time,
sucked.
which includes the phones. This can easily make a situation go from bad to worse, so you have to be careful. Once you finish this night, the next minigame has you playing as Blank. This time around, the objective is to find and retrieve 4 papers with drawings on them. The first one is right in front of you, and it depicts the new versions of
New
Candy
Candy
and
and
Cindy.
Sydney.
The next one seems to be a child asking where Chester
Where is Chester?
Considering
Without
the
the
office
H.
calendar says 1991, this means that for whatever reason, the company never bothered to restore him. The
Oof.
third and fourth drawings seem to be less significant.
For Blank.
A child drawing a mustache or something onto Blank, and a child imagining he's in a
For
band with Candy and Cindy. Night 4 doesn't actually add
Let's say
very
our
much,
band.
sort of just amping up the general game difficulty. The Night 4 minigame also doesn't actually seem to mean anything substantial, as it just has you playing as Cindy and returning Candy's lost
I
tie-in.
understand this has a
Though
minor
it is
lore
worth
significance.
mentioning, this one takes place in 1992. Though Blank does have a rare chance to appear on Night 4, Night 5 is where he truly debuts. Unlike his unique nature in the
God.
first
Blank looks
game,
terrifying
his
in this one.
mechanics here are standard, and he kind of just gets condensed into the wandering animatronic category, like Candy and Cindy. If I have to speculate, Emile may have been concerned with game balance and decided not to give Blank a unique mechanic for this reason because it might be too hectic. In general, the difficulty is taken to a higher level on this night, and at this point there are quite a few threats to deal with. Finally, we arrive at the Night 5 minigame where you play as the iconic Candy himself.
Here
In
he
this
is.
minigame, you find a dead security guard
And
in the
there's
office, and it
there's
looks
police
like he
everywhere.
died to some kind of blunt force trauma to the head. This takes place in 1993, and no other characters can be seen anywhere in the restaurant. When you venture to the left and go
Oh,
up,
his door
you
is
get
open.
trapped and surrounded by police, and one of them tases you and the screen fades to black.
Oh wow.
Then we get our first ending.
Police
We can
really just
actually learn
charged
a
in
lot
on
from
him.
this headline. We can see that the game took place in August of 2007 within the abandoned Robotics Corp factory, and it seems to have closed the same year the security guard died that we just saw, and it stood for a total of 45 years, founded in 1962. After nearly 15 years of inactivity, the factory was finally set for demolition. In total, 6 fatal incidents occurred in the factory, the most famous of which being the death of twins who were run through the assembly machines of the factory in 1987. This is most definitely what we saw depicted in the cutscenes from Five Nights at Candy's 1.
Oh wow.
Though the factory would soon be demolished, the story was not quite over. Night 6 only has 2 animatronics, the rat and the cat. Though there are only 2, they are highly aggressive. The rat has Chester's vent mechanic and the penguin's camera compromising mechanic. Despite this, Night 6 does actually definitely
sounds
end up
OP.
being easier than the previous nights. Even if they're supposed to be more aggressive, there are, in the end, only 2 threats to deal with. The final minigame after this has you playing as Old Candy, who hasn't yet made an appearance in this game at all up until this point. Similar to the Shadow Freddy in the FNAF 3 minigames, in a
the
sense,
follow me
you get
thing.
lured by a Shadow Candy into a room, only to be attacked for doing seemingly nothing. However, that's not the end. You get to play again,
Jeez.
this time as an undamaged Blank. Like before, you must
the security
collect
guard was
drawings, this
scared,
time
but
5
wow.
of them. The office calendar says 1976, which was implied by Blank's undamaged state. But now we have confirmation this takes place before even the first Candy's game. The first 4 drawings aren't anything abnormal, but the 5th seems to show the shadow candy figure we just saw. Then shadow candy appears directly behind you, and the game once again switches to old candy's perspective.
Bro got
This time,
kidnapped.
though, the instruction says just help. Unlike all of the minigames so far, this one seems to actually take place during normal operating hours of the restaurant. A lone adult can be seen in one of the rooms, and children and more adults.
Why is just an
and
adult
others.
chilling there?
Shadow candy once again
Like he isn't
leads you
just standing at
elsewhere,
some
and you
kid's
find a lone
restaurant.
crying child in the security office.
How did you even
This
get
takes
there?
place in 1987. He seems comforted by your appearance and he leaves. However, upon returning to the room with the lone adult, we learn why he was likely crying in the first place. His father is abusing him. Since the animatronics were most likely programmed to save children that are in trouble, and Old Candy sees this situation and misunderstands it, he takes action, and the minigame finally ends.
Bro got game
This is
ended.
definitely the incident that we
He
heard
got
from the
game
phone guy in
ended.
Candy's 1.
And in case the animatronics is experiencing violence towards a guest, the animatronic will try to seek out the cause and stop it. I have no idea how it decides to do that. But
It'll
after
probably
that
stuff him in
day,
the suit or
the animatronics
eat him.
don't really seem to function properly around adults.
I assume he ate him.
Especially not around the staff.
And now we get our true ending. Factory burned to the ground. It seems like the teenage character that we played as had some kind of vendetta with this place, because not only did she decide to uphold the lost bet, but she also showed up a 6th time for seemingly no reason, since that wasn't part of the bet, only to burn the place to the ground when the morning came. There is one more detail left in this game, and it's actually quite important.
Thank
Upon
God she burned
completing
it.
the game's hardest challenge, 720 Nightmare Mode or Night 8, the player is rewarded with a bonus
720.
cutscene that reveals a taste of what can be expected to be explored in the next game.
Oh. You know what? I think I remember seeing this. He probably bit that kid. Yep, he's bending over. He's bending down. So it'll be a bite of 87. Did he touch the kid's head, or? Yeah, we could
As
probably
he
assume
did
it
with
was.
the previous games,
we could
Emil
assume.
would use his social media platforms to post teaser images
It's probably
leading
Bite
up
of
to the
87.
release of Five Nights at Candy's 3.
Story can't end
And
without
at
a
this
beginning.
point, it's obvious where the inspiration for each game came from. Candy's 1 was
Will you
mechanically
find me, or
similar
will I
to
find
FNAF
you?
1, but visually similar to FNAF 2.
1962.
Candy's 2 was mechanically and visually similar to FNAF 3, and Candy's 3 would sort of follow on this path, but this one was different. It shared the same vague concept
trailer.
of FNAF 4, but it didn't really feel as much as a copy this time. It felt much more like an original game, an actual refreshing spin on the formula. The game would undoubtedly be Emil's magnum opus, and it was obvious by how much time he was spending
This
on it
really
this
was
time
Aim
around.
Tracker, the Five Nights at Freddy's
On June
game.
19th, 2016, the main trailer for the game was released, but the full game wouldn't release for another 9 months, preceded, of course, by a demo and separate minigame trailer. Then, March 5th, 2017 came around, and it was time.
The hell is
I
that?
remember what you did. They remember too. You were the reason that
That's
we were
probably the
all
puppet.
there. It happened because of you, and you can't tell anyone. Why would you? It is your fault.
Yep, Mr.
All
Puppet.
of it. How are you feeling today? It's been 2 weeks. I understand that it was a very traumatic experience, but luckily your brother wasn't seriously hurt. You have to remember, they weren't real, they were just machines. They aren't capable of harming anyone. What happened was just an accident. He was just broken. But it's okay now. You're safe here. You remembered them from the theater? Ah, yes, the old one that you and your father went to a year ago, right? Your father has told me about what happened while you were there. You got separated from each other that day when the incident happened. have you still had nightmares since we last met? Were they about those monsters you drew for me? You're a very creative girl, but you can't let your fears take control of your imagination.
Detail too.
In order for your nightmares to end, you have to face your fears. You have to face the monsters. Show them that you're not afraid. Do you understand? It's the only way. Now, Mary, I need you to try and remember what happened on that day a year ago. Once this scene ends, you wake up in a room with a green bed.
Starting to get all the memories back then.
You're playing as a child, Mary Schmidt, the protagonist of Candies 1, and you're dreaming.
I just think at the time I didn't know the names, so hearing all this lore is like putting pieces in.
Game mechanics before dropping you into the first night. She recalls that Mary's father gave her a cassette player years ago with soft music in order to help her sleep.
Oh yeah, didn't the cassette player help
notes
too?
That the monsters hate light,
in the game?
You should flash your flashlight at them when given the chance, except if they're under the bed. If they make it under the bed, you need to check underneath to see which side they went to, go back up, and look towards the opposite side. Once you hear them quietly emerge from the side you weren't looking at, you quickly shine your flashlight at them to make them go away.
That sounds very complicated, all being said out loud.
To be taking place within the depths of Mary's subconscious, the deepscape, and the path laid out in front of you is where it's safe. The origami cat says that she can always help you find your way back as long as you're on this path. The darkness is dangerous.
Surely just got snatched by a
note
PNG.
Found along the path sheds some light on the earlier machinations of Candies as a corporate entity.
Or of a
the
newspaper.
Older wire animatronics were meant to be repurposed into the fully mobile newer models, and once you find the recorder and return to your bed, the tutorial portion ends, and the game can finally begin.
First night.
The game takes place in Mary's bedroom, and the tape recorder allows for time to pass more quickly when it's playing.
This game was so genius. I love it.
After an amount of time, the track will stop playing automatically. Then the player must press the rewind button, which will slowly rewind the tape so that it can be played again. If the player wants to do this while music is still playing, they must first click on the stop button. If an enemy is underneath the bed, they will attempt to sabotage the tape. On the first night, you get introduced to the first antagonist, which is the monster rat.
Just hiding everywhere.
He starts outside the bedroom, and if the player hears thumping and knocking, it means he is either hiding at the door, in the wardrobe, or in the closet. The player must shine their flashlight at these locations to force him back. If the player does not force him back in time, he will enter the room, and he will then stand in one of 3 locations within the room, and a purple blood-like vignette will appear around the player's view. The player must shine their flashlight at his eyes, and this is easier said than done, as
just look at this game training video game
to avoid the flashlight. After about 10 seconds or so of this, the flashlight will flicker and Monster Rat will go underneath the bed. From there, the procedure that
something crawled under the bed
on must be followed exactly, otherwise the player dies. Check underneath the bed, see what side he's on, go back up to the opposite side, wait for the sound cue, and then shine the light in his face to make him go away, and the process repeats itself. In this game, there are 2 different kinds of minigames, technically. A flashback
running out the
minigame
door.
or a dreamscape minigame. The Dreamscape minigames are always optional, but they do reveal important lore details that I will talk about later. Since Night 2 is essentially the same as Night 1, I'll go ahead and talk about the first 2 minigames at the same time. The end of Night 1 is a flashback minigame, and it has you play as a younger Mary, at what we can assume to be the Rat and Cat Theater, the predecessor to Candy's Burgers and Fries. The end of Night 2 is also a flashback minigame, and it's actually pretty similar. One detail in this game that I think is pretty funny is this kid right here. They're a genuine hater.
This place sucks, the costumes aren't even that convincing.
The thing that makes this minigame similar is that you play hide and seek again, which is gonna be something that you do a lot in these, except this time with the cat instead of the rat.
Yeah, I can see how someone develops nightmares from that. soulless suit. You just get found. Jeez.
On night 3, you
Way
now
to
have
traumatize
two
a 60-year-old
adversaries
person.
to contend against. Monster Cat is now present, and he behaves completely differently from the rat. He will appear from either the very right or very left side of the bed, and if not checked on, he will get closer over time before eventually crawling onto the bed. And if not checked at this state, Monster Cat will take the music tape and jump scare the player after a while, or when they look under the bed to check on Monster Rat,
Oh gosh.
which ends your night. The Night 3 minigame is
is why
slightly
cats
different
suck.
from before. This time we get introduced to the Puppeteer. Now, based on his title and his design, we can already tell right off the bat that this guy has something to do with the puppet from before. But for now, that's all we really have on him. From there, you play hide and seek with the rat again.
The puppet's
and the
not on
same
its
thing
own. It has a
happens, you get
puppeteer this
caught.
time.
The room around you is no longer empty, as Mary has begun to remember more about her past. Now, there is a timer for how long the player is allowed to stray off the path, and many secrets are hidden across the gaps between the paths. Running brings the attention of the shadow rat, so you must walk across these gaps, being mindful of your time. If the time runs out, then you might have to deal with something else.
He says walk, but then he just like runs right across. My gosh.
This is all optional. of
Another
course.
scary purple PNG.
Since the gameplay for Nights 4 and 5 is pretty much the same as Night 3, I will skip straight to the next few minigames. The end of Night 4's minigame essentially just boils down to playing hide and seek with the cat again, though it is worth noting that this minigame supposedly takes place on Vinny's birthday, so now we have a name for the puppeteer's puppet. Night 5 also begins with a minigame like Night 4. At this point, Mary has nearly fully recovered her memories. By the time this night is over, all would be revealed. It's the day of a surprise show, and because of that, there are far more people here than usual. This means that once they decide to play hide and seek, all of Mary's usual spots are taken, and no one lets her hide with them. In an effort to find a good spot to hide, she encounters the employee storage room, which has been kind of flaunted at the player's face this entire time, throughout the whole game. But this time the door is wide open.
Like a
so
cat just
naturally,
left?
You would go in. She's never been in there before, so she probably thinks that it's a great secret spot that nobody would ever find her in. A perfect hiding spot. We get to find the puppet,
wait a
Vinny,
second.
and some drawings that the children drew for the performers.
Wait a
trash.
second. I think I remember this.
On the table in the bottom right
This was
corner,
messed
the
up.
script for today's secret show reveals that they intended to reveal the name of the characters for the first time. The cat's real name is Candy. Mary hides in the locker, not knowing what she's about to witness. The rat comes in. He knows Mary went into this
Wasn't
room,
he drunk
but
too?
the puppeteer quickly cuts him off, though. He knows that the rat's actor came into work drunk, and tells him that he can't work that way. He needs to go home. Imagine if the parents found out that a kid's performer was drunk on the job. The puppeteer had a good point, honestly. He had their careers in mind. The rat wasn't hearing any of it, though. Being the most popular character in the show had inflated his ego, and being drunk definitely didn't help. The argument and disagreement turned into a scuffle, and the scuffle turned into a fist fight.
Cut it out. I can just
The rat,
imagine the
too
drunkenness in
drunk
his
to maintain
voice.
his balance after being pushed off by
All
the
that smelly
puppeteer,
alcohol in that
tumbles
puppeteer's
backwards
face.
and
Ugh.
hits the back of his neck on the sharp edge
Yeah.
of the table and collapses.
This was messed up.
He's dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
The cat comes in. The puppeteer explains the situation,
Lock
and
the
he
door.
wants to make it seem like an accident. Since the rat had a tendency to be unstable, and the puppeteer he can't fathom losing his career over an accident like this when he was in the right. He was obviously right about the argument. He can't lose his career over that. But the cat, being a more honest person, believes that they should tell the truth. but the puppeteer can't bring himself to.
But like, bro, how do you push someone so hard on this table that they just like, bro has been using like tremendous force.
Do that.
Like,
everything would be over. Everything that he's ever worked for. The cat goes on to the phone and starts to call the police. And in the heat of the moment, the puppeteer gets an idea. Thinking about his career and his future, and realizing that he can probably get away with this. He can get away with this. He can kill him. He strangles the cat to death. And now he's just a victim of a freak accident.
Bruh. Imagine if you tried to hide in that closet.
Outside. But we know he's just a cold-hearted murderer.
I wonder what my reaction was when I first seen
this. He lies
this.
to the police. Brings his diploma with him, the only thing that he truly valued in this room above even his companions, and Mary is left in the locker, sobbing, having seen and heard the entire ordeal. Throughout the game, Mary has been working with her therapist to overcome her trauma from this incident, and now she remembers. The therapist asks their assistant to arrange a meeting with the police and those responsible for this case, because this needs to be brought to justice. And there's still one more thing that Mary needs to get over. Her guilt. Should she have told the police at all in the first place?
So is that why the pup has been saying, your fault, my fault,
life,
my mistake and stuff?
Even though the whole thing probably wouldn't have even happened if she didn't decide to hide in that room. This is what leads to the final night. The final confrontation.
Oh, nah. That's why the puppet holds all that anger since the first game.
Night 6 only has one enemy. Monster Vinny acts as a much more difficult version of the rat. His confrontations last significantly longer, and it's harder to aim your flashlight.
Yeah, he's just spinning around.
In general, he is significantly
get that aim
more
labs tracking
than the
up.
other enemies as well. When he leaves the room, his movements even look like he's being puppeteered by a greater force.
Oh my gosh.
I honestly think that this is fantastic storytelling, and this game has some of the greatest of that in any Five Nights at Freddy's fan.
Five Nights at Candy's, it's never lost. That's all I gotta say. I've never seen an L one.
Done, we get a direct continuation.
When FNAC 4 drops, it's gonna be insane.
Game. Mary exits the building, seeing the bloody scene in front of her, and gets reunited with her father. The police don't even understand why she was still in there. They were supposed to do a sweep of the building, but she was so scared that it
Who's that
took
officer
her
yelling
that
at?
long just to decide to leave the safety of the locker. On the sidelines, we can see the puppeteer, who has the audacity to cry while discussing what happened with the police officers. He's certainly
look at him over there, he's
right
crying.
to their face, and his tears are not for others, but are his own. Stressed out by a situation that nearly ruined his future, likely overjoyed that he was able to make it out of the situation with zero consequence.
Like, Brody might have got away with it if you would have just told the police what happened.
Then we get the ending. Mary has fully recovered from her trauma, and the guilt has been lifted from her shoulders. Her therapy sessions can finally come to an end. Though this is technically the final game, there is one more game that I can talk about as of now. You see, although the story of Five Nights at Candy's was meant to end with the third game, on the 4th anniversary of the original Candy's game, Emil released Five Nights at Candy's
Oh yeah, they were
Remastered,
remastered.
in which he reprogrammed and remodeled the entire first game from scratch. The gameplay is essentially identical, so I won't waste your time going over any details involving that. However, there is a secret present in this game that was not in the original. If you go onto the extras menu and zoom into the rat's profile and wait, this will happen.
Have I ever done this before on the remastered? Because what the hell is this? 0, 0, 0, 0, another 0. Cam 13. I don't remember ever doing this.
From here, if you
I don't
enter the
remember
numbers
something
on
like
the
that.
custom night menu, you're met with Shadow Candy,
Oh,
who
Lord.
transports you to a secret night.
But I
the Null
remember
Night.
this, though.
There's
I remember
now a
Shadow
purple
Candy.
overlay over the whole screen.
Oh, there's the cat.
The origami cat is on your desk, and Cam 13 is now available. When Shadow Candy reaches you, he doesn't actually kill you. He does deplete your power and reverse time by 1 hour, though. If the power runs out, he kills you
I
pretty
remember
much
that
instantly.
ability. I remember
However,
Shadow Candy,
if
though.
you manage to complete this challenge, you get treated to a secret teaser cutscene.
Freddy Fazbear's? That was OG. Newspaper print.
I don't know if I'm going insane or something. Nothing works.
I don't think I've seen this. What the f?
I know it should work, but it just doesn't. It's like he's... I guess I just need to sleep. As much as I hate having to spend my time like that. Unconscious and lifeless. Like him. I won't stop until he's absolutely perfect. End of audio log.
What the heck? Yeah, FNAC 4 is definitely going to be...
From here, we finally have all the pieces
It
in
is going to
place
be
to
good.
summarize the entire series plot. So, here we go. In 1962, Mary Schmidt and her father make a visit to the Rat and Cat Theater while her brother is away at camp. She plays hide and seek every day she's
The
there
lore
and is
explanation.
always caught, but eventually finds a way to hide in the employee-only room
Guess a refresher would
where
be
she
nice.
witnesses the accidental death of the Rat's performer and the murder of the Cat's performer at the hands of the puppeteer, whose puppet is named Vinny. The Rat and Cat Theater closes and Mary is left traumatized from the incident to such an extent that she loses the ability to recall those memories. The spirits
Which
of
is
the
kinda
performers
crazy
go on to
when you think
haunt their
about that.
respective suits, and the suits are for some reason repurposed into animatronics with plans to reopen despite someone literally dying inside of them. Later, when the theater reopens, she returns with her brother. He gets a little too close to the stage, though, and gets attacked by the rat animatronic due to its possession, though he escapes without major consequence. From here, Mary's trauma only worsens, and she begins to go to therapy sessions after endless nightmares about the rat and cat. We learn from some hidden details in the Dreamscape minigames that the puppeteer who escaped consequence for his crimes originally went on to become a famous movie actor, where he played a disturbingly convincing, psychopathic villain.
Wow.
After overcoming her fear and guilt by
Must have missed
facing
that
her
part.
demons in her nightmares, she manages to pull through and can tell the police what really happened that day. Her testimony has the puppeteer brought to justice, tried and executed for his crimes.
Oof.
However, those lost souls have yet to be laid to rest. The Rat and Cat Theater rebrands as Candy's Burgers and Fries, and they do see brief success. From here, the events of the Five Nights at Candy's 2 minigames can take place, and eventually the Candy animatronic attacks a father after seeing him abuse his child. This incident causes the animatronics to be set for replacement. At some point, Mary visits the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria location from the one before FNAF 2, and gets reminded of her past after seeing the eerily similar puppet. She gets a job at the Robotics Corp factory as a
What minigame
security
was that
guard,
one?
and stumbles upon the older tapes we see between nights in Five Nights at Candy's. She also
now I
gets
can understand why I
confronted
said
once
a
again
mistake,
with
my
Vinny,
mistake.
which is likely a manifestation of the puppeteer's vengeful spirit. He is angry that his life was ruined by her, and he knows exactly who she is and plans to ruin her life. One night, Mary falls asleep on the job, and the rat disables the cameras by breaking them. He goes on to murder 2 children by putting them through the assembly machine, which fuses their souls to Candy and Cindy. Now the new animatronics are debuted, and on an unrelated note, the new and improved Freddy's from FNAF 2 shuts down due to unfortunate circumstances that we already know of. From here, Five Nights at Candy's can occur. The previous night guard asks the junior manager to accompany him on one of his last shifts of the work week because he found something that he needs to share with him, but the manager declines.
So remember that previous security guard I told you about? Yeah, so we got a call from the police today. Apparently he has gone missing. I remember, like, the day before his last night of the week, he asked me to be with him on his shift that night. He told me there was something he had to show me. I know, it sounds crazy, right?
The next morning, the employees find that Blank has been severely damaged, probably by this employee, and he's gone missing without a trace. From there, he's just fired and sent a pink slip, since he doesn't seem to have any intent of coming back. And then the stage is set for an older Mary Schmidt, who takes up the now open position to further investigate what's really happening here. She finds that the animatronics are malicious and out to attack her, something that she probably didn't expect. When she was a kid, she was afraid of something exactly like this happening. After the end of the work week, Mary is rewarded with her check, but she comes back the next day, despite not being asked to do so. She returns again the next night, but is fired for tampering with the animatronics, most likely because she was onto something. But from here, she no longer had any means of interacting with the situation, so it seems like she just decided to let it go. In the late 80s and early 90s, Candy and Cindy are replaced by slightly upgraded versions of themselves, and Chester's upgrade plans are denied. Chester is given the key to the room the rat is in by the puppeteer's spirit, and Chester is destroyed, and the rat is allowed to roam freely. In 1993, the rat kills the current security guard, and Candy's is finally forced to shut down, along with the factory that provided the animatronic services. 14 years later, Mary's daughter, Marilyn, is dared by her friends to spend 5 nights in the abandoned factory that now houses the ruined remains of what once was
really makes sense why
the
someone would
Candy's
do
brand.
this.
After spending 5
factory
nights
for
surviving
5 days?
her adversaries, she burns the factory to the ground, and the spirits of all the remaining animatronics are finally at peace. And that's where our story ends, or at least it would have. Five Nights at Candy's 4 introduces a whole new rabbit hole's worth of information. All we know so far is that there is at least one newer animatronic, that being this newer Candy model. Based on this transmission, a Reddit post that clarified the game was still meant for the Click Team engine despite being free roam, and the game's general aesthetic, I'd say it's pretty safe to assume that this game is going to be at least vaguely inspired by Sister Location, and the disembodied voice we heard in the teaser log may be this universe's William Afton equivalent, but not in the sense that he's like a murderer
confirmation
or anything,
the story's about
in the sense that
robotics.
he's the one orchestrating the game's events and may have been the one to construct this newer animatronic. For now, though, all we can really do is speculate. But it's exciting to think about this wonderful series still receiving new and refreshing developments even this far after its release.
Wow. Man, like, I'm happy there was somebody who actually put
Overall,
Five Nights at Candy's together
Five Nights at Candy's
into a video.
is definitely
Because I
one
don't know
of
if
the best
MatPat
fan
even
game
did
series
that.
we've ever received.
It's a good story.
We'll go out
Good
on a limb
graphics,
and
good
say that it's
everything.
definitely the most iconic. I hope I speak for everyone when I say I'm really looking forward to the 4th game.
Hell yeah.
There is also one last thing I would like to point out, though only briefly. There is a little spin-off game called FNAC Fur that Emil teased about 8 or 9 months ago at this point.
It's gonna
That
be
looks
like
pretty
FNAF
cool.
World, I think.
But I decided not to talk about it substantially because we don't really know much about it.
Like FNAF
Anyways, remember to check out Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of this video.
Alright, I think that's pretty much it for this video. Yeah, like I said, I'm really glad there's somebody out there who really put Five Nights at Candy's all together and really showed the world why it's such a great fan game and why they should try it themselves. Make sure you guys go check out my other Five Nights at Candy's videos. There's some really good certified hood classics, and let me know on this video if you want me to play FNAC 4 when it drops by hitting that like button, comment down below, subscribe, and turn on all notifications, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.